So in this video, we're going to look at the 4 most common mistakes with shoulder rehab. So when we usually look at like the shoulder and shoulder pain, there are a few underlying issues that we need to address before we actually focus on the shoulder. So most of the time, that is one of the most common mistakes, is that we've just focused on the shoulder and not the actual postural issues that lead to the shoulder pain. So shoulder pain being a symptom of other things going on, and these are usually lifestyle factors, postural issues, repetitive movements, and that really affects how we address the shoulder issue itself. So considering with shoulder pain, if we look at most people who suffer with shoulder pain, you look at their posture, we've got that upper crossed, rounded, internally rotated shoulders. So that puts a lot of pressure on the shoulder joint itself, because one, you lack the range of movement within the shoulder itself, so you're likely to pinch and irritate the tissues in the shoulder, so you're going to have an impingement. You put the rotator cuff muscles in a poor position, so then you end up injuring those as well. So looking at that posture where you're rounded, forward rounded position, you try and raise your arms out the side, you'll find a point where you're pinching the shoulders. Now test that. If you open up your shoulders, draw your shoulders back, sit up nice and tall, you can actually get pretty much full range of movement. But like most people, we spend a lot of time at our desk, we spend a lot of time driving, looking at computers, watching TV. We tend to slump in this position. So we get very good at being in this position, but then we want to ask our body to get out of that position and then use our shoulders, for example. We haven't adapted for that. We've adapted for this kind of rounded forward posture. And what happens is that you're actually closing down the space within the shoulder, and then you're going to get an impingement syndrome where you're pinching the soft tissue in the shoulder, which is going to cause you pain and discomfort. It also, like I was saying earlier, just puts your rotator cuff muscles in a poor position. So you're likely to have overuse issues within the soft tissue. So the first thing we need to address is lifestyle factors. So there's no point looking for that the best exercise for your shoulder pain, the best treatment plan for your shoulder pain, if you're going to go back and doing all those things that you were doing before that have brought on the underlying cause of your shoulder pain. So we need to look at your sleeping posture, your sitting posture, your repetitive movements, how you're training, for example, in the gym, because we tend to focus on a lot of pushing exercises and we don't tend to focus on stuff that's going to put our shoulders in an optimal position. So anything retracting shoulders, open up the chest. So we're spending so much time in that rounded position, we're very poor at getting into that tall spine, open chest position. So that's the first mistake. Second mistake, we try and stretch out the shoulder. We try and stretch all the soft tissue, try and improve the mobility of that shoulder. But actually, we should be focusing our efforts on increasing thoracic mobility in extension, but also in rotation. Because like I was saying before, that lack of thoracic mobility into extension or rotation means that we have restricted movement, which is going to then cause an impingement of the shoulder. So there's no point trying to stretch off the shoulder, because actually the restriction is more central within the thoracic spine. So second mistake is focusing on flexibility and mobility of the shoulder. Rather, you should be focusing on the thoracic mobility aspect of it. The third most common mistake is that we focus on strengthening up the rotator cuff muscles of the shoulder. So yes, that is important, but we're going to get more bang for the buck at focusing on the postural stabilizers. So you're looking at the serratus anterior, which are really good at stabilizing the shoulder blade, the middle and lower traps, and your rhomboids. So like I was saying before, you spend a lot of time in this position, in a stretch position. Actually, we tend to have weakness in those muscles. So weakness in those muscles means that we're going to be putting more pressure onto the rotator cuff muscles, which means overuse of the rotator cuff muscles in a poor position, which is going to cause you shoulder pain. So let's focus on activating and strengthening up those big muscles in your back to have a better shoulder position, and then we can start focusing on the rotator cuff muscles themselves. And the final most common mistake is actually when we actually are doing the correct exercises, for example, shoulder retractions, where we're trying to strengthen up the mid and lower traps, rhomboid, serratus anterior, we get ourselves in a poor position that actually we're not engaging the correct muscles. So for example, you might find when you're in a bent over position and you're doing those shoulder retractions, your shoulder's still stuck in this forward rounded position. So what we need to do is, before we even start the movement, is retract the shoulder blades, squeeze your shoulder blades together and down into your back pockets, then perform the exercise. So you're actually activating the correct muscles. So you can see if I'm just rounded in this position, I'm really just exercising the arms. But actually what we're going to do is draw your shoulder blades back and down, engage the muscles we want to be targeting, then do the whole movement and squeeze your shoulder blades together and hold it there, and then repeat. So it's a nice slow controlled movement, but really focusing on that retraction of the shoulders rather than just exercising the arms. So just to recap, the 4 most common mistakes when you're addressing shoulder pain or shoulder rehab is 1, not taking into account our lifestyle factors. So sleep posture, sitting posture, repetitive movements. Second mistake is focusing on the flexibility of the shoulder, so the mobility of the shoulder rather than addressing spinal mobility, especially in the upper back. Third mistake is over-exercising the rotator cuff muscles. So we spend a lot of time doing all the external rotations, but we should be focusing on the bigger muscles that support your posture, but also the stability of the scapula, your shoulder blades. So mid and lower traps, rhomboid, serratus anterior. So that's the third mistake, focusing on the wrong muscles initially. And the last mistake is actually when you do perform the right exercises, you're performing them wrong. So you're not engaging the muscles you're trying to target. So we spend a lot of time with our shoulders in a forward rounded position, whereas we should be starting the exercise by retracting the shoulder blades, squeezing the shoulder blades together, then performing the motion.